You know how everyone has that one show they love and everyone else hates? Well, for me, that show is Fairy Tail. Okay, maybe it's not fair to say everyone hates it. After all, it does have a pretty large fan base. But the fans aren't as vocal about it as those that don't like the show. Sure, there are comment threads where people have stated their love for Fairy Tail, but even then, a lot of them are the "I know it's bad, but" type of comments, which I really don't understand. I mean, why would you say something you like is bad? If it's bad, you wouldn't like it. It's fine to acknowledge something you like has shortcomings, but that doesn't make it bad. It just means it's not perfect, like everything else created by man. But that's beside the point. As far as content creators producing content praising Fairy Tail are concerned, they are far outnumbered by the content creators that produce content criticizing Fairy Tail. So I've decided to join these brave few who praised Fairy Tail in order to help bring balance to the universe. This won't be an in-depth analysis or review video, as others already did those kinds of videos. Instead, I'll try to explain what exactly it is about Fairy Tail that I love so much. So buckle up and join me on this magical journey into the world of Fairy Tail.
Follow the path you believe in, cause that's what makes the Fairy Tail Guild #1!
Let's start at the beginning. Before you even start watching a show, you usually read about the setting to see if you're at all interested in watching it. So what exactly is the setting of Fairy Tail? It's your usual, a group of friends go on adventures in a fantasyland type of story. But this time, they are all mages. And not just your usual glass cannon mages. No sir, these are the Chad mages, that take names and kick ass. So outside of the portrayal of mages, it's nothing we haven't seen before in the fantasy genre. But it's also not offensively boring or overdone to the point it's not welcome in today's pop cultural landscape. I mean, just look at all the fantasy media that was made recently, and is still being made. And while the setting isn't that original, what about the world it all takes place in?
Don't you want to learn more about this amazing world while we have the chance?
Not really.
Fairy Tail is set in the kingdom of Fiora in the realm of Earthland. Magic is abundant there and a part of everyday life. To the wider public it's available in the form of magic items, but there are also some who use magic to earn a living. Those people are known as mages, and they gather in guilds, like the titular Fairy Tail, to take on all sorts of jobs that require their particular set of skills. You know, things like capturing bandits and dangerous criminals, exterminating some monsters, stealing a book, and destroying the moon. That's pretty much all the important aspects of Fairy Tail's world building summed up. But as far as other aspects are concerned, not much of them is fleshed out. As for the politics of the world, we know that the guilds are governed by the Magic Council, which is the greatest authority concerning the regulation of magic in the country. The world's geography? We get a map. Not even a proper map, more like an outline of the continent. And we know nothing about the world's history except that there were dragons in the past and now there doesn't seem to be any. Now, this may turn some of you who prefer extensive world building like the one found in One Piece or Tolkien's work off of Fairy Tail. And I understand if this may seem like lazy writing on Hiro Mashima's part to you. But I think this lack of information about the world works better for what Fairy Tail was going for. Remember, the show is all about a group of friends going on adventures together. Heck, that longing for adventure is the reason Fairy Tail, the guild, got its name.
Yes, but you see, nobody knows whether or not fairies have tails, or if they even exist. So it'll forever be a mystery, unless we try to find out, which could become an amazing adventure. And our members are the ones who would want to find out.
And going out into the unknown and experiencing new things and seeing new locales is what makes these kinds of adventures fun and exciting. That's why, in my opinion, the lack of world building in Fairy Tail works to its advantage in creating that sense of adventure. But I believe the world is only as good as the characters in it, and Fairy Tail doesn't lack good characters.
Fairy Tail has come calling!
Fairy Tail is packed with characters, so it helps that most of them are very likable. From the main group to the side characters, they all have distinct personalities and habits that differentiates them from one another, and the character design for each of them is distinct and fitting. They are also quite funny. In fact, during my latest rewatch earlier this year, I was surprised how much funnier than I remembered the show was. Some may not share that view with me, but Fairy Tail's comedic style is right up my alley, so I enjoyed the jokes quite a bit. The comedy mostly involves the characters displaying their quirks. No, not those quirks, but quirks in behavior. Like Gray taking his clothes off, Elfman yelling about manliness and being a man, and Loki trying to seduce anything that walks on two legs. And while it may seem that giving a character a quirk is just lazy attempt to make them funny, it is anything but. Each of these quirks have a reason behind them, and it's mostly connected to a tragic event that happened to the character in the past. And to give credit where credit is due, Hiro Mashima knows how to write tragic backstories for his characters. The characters in Fairy Tail have some of my favorite backstories in any show that I watched, with Grace, Zeref, and Untears being my favorites. Most of the main cast also developed significantly during the course of the show, with Wendy and Gajil being the most striking examples. At the end of the show, they are completely different than when we were first introduced to them. Wendy went from a clumsy and timid child to a confident young woman and one of the strongest mages in the guild. And Gajil, who started as an antagonist turned Fairy Tail guild member, went from a violent jerk who only cares for his amusement to one of the core members of the guild. He, of course, didn't get a warm welcome from the other guild members because of what he did to them in the past. But over the course of the show, he demonstrated that he regrets his past actions and he slowly gained the other members' trust. It was a gradual process, and during that time, he softened up a bit and started acting more open around people, which allowed him to form important relationships with other characters. This development and his interactions with other characters is what made him my favorite character in the show. And speaking of favorite characters, I have to mention the master of Fairy Tail Guild, Makaro. I love that guy. He's the wise mentor type of character, and he has some of the best speeches I've ever heard. It's like Hiro Mashima wanted to write inspirational messages for a living, but he got roped into writing manga, so he created a character that lets him live out that dream in Makaro. Seriously, when I feel down, I just look up Makaro quotes and I start feeling better after reading them. And he was the one who helped Gajil when he was down on his luck, so I appreciate him more for that. Fairy Tail also has a lot of strong female characters, probably the most out of every shonen I've watched. And not those female characters whose only character trait is that they are strong. No, they are properly written characters with distinct personalities, strengths and flaws. Yes, some of them have strength as one of their prominent characteristics, but it's not what defines them. Their true character is revealed when they can't be strong anymore. They may break down and cry as any human, but they never give up and they keep moving forward. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the biggest problem concerning Fairy Tail's characters, and that is that Natsu, the main character, doesn't develop during the course of this show. He's the same at the end as he was at the beginning. There were a few opportunities where his character could develop, but it all just got tossed aside at the end. It's a missed opportunity for sure, but since the overall cast is so good and he does dumb funny things when he's on screen, I can look past that issue. He also has some truly hype scenes, and his fights are some of the highlights of each arc. Speaking of fights, it's a good segue to talk about Fairy Tail's probably most disliked aspect, the power system.
There's no reason to be afraid! When we're together, we can accomplish anything!
It's a bit tricky to talk about Fairy Tail's power system because there isn't one. We know the characters battle each other using magic, and they have a limited pool of magic energy in their body which they can use to cast spells, like chakra in Naruto. And while all the different types of magic are imaginative and distinct from one another, there is no system in place for us to know how the characters can use their magic and how they can strengthen it, other than the usual shonen training of lifting weights and blasting the same magic over and over again till it gets stronger. What is explained is usually vague and boils down to magic is fueled by emotion, and the stronger the emotions the character experiences, the stronger his magic is. This leads to characters overcoming obstacles that seemed insurmountable by simply thinking about their friends who believe in them and gaining the dreaded power of friendship boost, which allows them to finally defeat their adversary.
Quick, inject him with 40 cc's of friendship!
And honestly, that's nothing new in anime. It's practically a staple in shonen anime, and I bet there's a moment like that in every one of them. Except maybe Road Trigger. I don't remember there being one. Does Fairy Tail abuse that concept more than other shows? Yes, definitely. But in my opinion, it compensates for that by making the fights exciting and visually stimulating. It has some of the best directed fight scenes I've ever seen in anime. Just look at fights like Natsu vs Jalal, Erza, Kagura and Minerva 3-way battle, Horacion Sace vs the League of Guild Alliance, and others that I won't list now to preserve time. They are all exciting, bombastic, and look cool as hell. And most importantly, they aren't overly long as to overstay their welcome. Looking at you, Dragon Ball Z. Is it shallow of me to judge these fights just based on spectacle? Kind of, but I don't really care. And the fights aren't just spectacle. Some are built up over the course of the arc or over the course of the entire show, so there's emotional investment present in the fights, which makes watching them a real cathartic experience. Fairy Tail may exploit the power of friendship more than other shows, but it's written in a way that it would be weird if it didn't.
Grandpa. I may not be able to see you. There may be hundreds of miles between us, but I'll always be looking your way. I'll be watching over you forever. I promise.
Fairy Tail is all about family. Not necessarily family that is connected by blood, but rather family you find yourself. It's also about love. In Fairy Tail's world, love is the source of magic. It's what gives magic its power, and it's the strongest magic. Now, call me cheesy, but I'm a sucker for stories like that. Stories where hate only ever brings failure, and love emerges the victor. I believe that's the message Hiro Mashima wanted to convey through his work, and judging by his newest work, Eden Zero, he's still trying to get that message across. And I find it ironic that someone who wanted to spread the idea of friendship and love is getting so much hate for it. That's why I love, and always will love, Fairy Tail. Because it tries to show what people can accomplish by forming bonds with one another. Bonds between people who share the same spirit. And while they don't always see eye to eye, accept each other for who they are and know that their differences don't need to drive them apart, but understanding them can bring them closer. Such is the bond that the members of Fairy Tail share with each other. The guild is a place where blood ties are irrelevant. If you share the same spirit that yearns for freedom and adventure, you're always welcome there. And even if your paths go in opposite directions, as long as you don't sever the bonds you made, you are always welcome there. You are family.
Although our paths must stray, promise to live the rest of your lives to the fullest. That means you must treat every day as though it were your last in this world. Never forget your Fairy Tail friends. Treasure them for as long as you live.